Hey guys, Matt back with another stack of wood. Today's project is a headboard. We finally upgraded my son to his big boy bed. It's a full-size bed and it's currently sitting on a nice metal frame, so it's well supported and easy to move around, but it has no headboard. I personally would be just as happy to put a couple of bookshelves on the wall at the head of the mattress and be done with it, but my wife likes the look of an actual headboard, so we're going to split the difference and build what's known as a Barrister style headboard, which basically means a bookshelf that attaches to the bed frame instead of the wall. What I have here is some fairly pricey pine. This is Claymark Select Pine. It's S6S dimensional lumber that you can get at either Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever your local home center happens to be. Now, why did I pick this particular wood? A couple of reasons. One, I guess there's a chance this could end up a painted project and I'll wish I had made it out of plywood, but the odds bet right now is that we're gonna go for some sort of a dye and or stain. And since I don't own a joiner or planer, my options are kind of limited in terms of purchasing rough lumber. Yes, the hardwood dealer around here will give you S6S lumber if you want it, but by the time you're done paying them to join it and plane it and cross cut it and all that fun stuff, it's actually no cheaper than going down to the home center. As pre-milled lumber goes at the home center, your options pretty much are red oak, poplar, and pine. The reality is for a kid's headboard, I couldn't justify spending the money on the red oak because he's gonna beat it. I actually really like the look of aged pine. This thing back behind me is pine. It has held up remarkably well, and that was a clear coat finish. That wood was the same color as the stuff sitting on the bench in front of me, albeit that's 25 years ago that it was clear coated. But I like the way pine ambers, yellows, whatever you want to call it, over time. I think it's a really nice look. Clamps. Yeah. This wood has been sitting here in my shop for a couple of 2 or 3 days. It's summer here in the Northeast. That means humidity, lots of humidity. The home center is air conditioned, so the wood is sitting in a climate controlled environment in the racks at the home center. Came home in an air conditioned vehicle, but then I brought it out here to the shop. The shop is not climate controlled. I do have a dehumidifier, so the humidity in the shop is manageable. It's 40–45%, something like that. But the temperature is definitely higher than this wood is used to. So I came out here and I clamped it down to the bench and have been letting it acclimate for a couple of days, hoping against hope that I don't create a bunch of pretzels when I start cutting into it.
Cutting begins on the chop saw, where the stock is chopped down to a rough length so it can be managed on the table saw. I clean up the factory cut end to get it nice and square, and the table saw makes a cleaner cut, frankly, than they give you from the factory. And then I measure to my exact length and cut it off. Ignore that pencil line that I'm leaving. That was my original rough cut dimension, which I decided was too close for comfort when I got to the chop saw.
With the parts for the carcass of this thing cut to length, I switched the table saw over to the Dado stack. The top of the bookcase sits into a rabbet on the top edge of the leg pieces. And the shelf that holds the books is going to be a dado in the side, a stopped dado actually in the side, and then a matching tongue on the shelf piece. I'm going to work on the rabbets for the top joint to the sides first. I have a scrap cut off piece here, and this wood is exactly 3/4 of an inch thick. Unlike the normal dimensional lumber you're used to where it's not really what it says it is. This really is 3/4 of an inch thick. So in theory, I could take care of one of my 2 dimensions by setting up the dado stack for 3/4 of an inch wide. Problem is that would mean I would have to get the exact edge of the board exactly lined up with the dado set. And the odds of me pulling that off are frankly not good. So what I've done instead is I've set it up for half the width. It's 3/8 of an inch right now, which means it'll take 2 passes to cut the entire rabbet. I have a sacrificial fence set up so that I can cut the first cut and make sure I get the edge of this thing. And I'm going to use that to set the depth. I want to cut away 1/2 of an inch, leaving 1/4 of an inch on my side piece. Once I get the depth set up, then I can work the fence out to make sure I get exactly 3/4 of an inch down from the top.
This is a sneak up on it operation. Using some scrap pieces, tap that thing, go back and forth until you get the rabbet width just where you want it to be. Using the 3/8 inch wide dado set can leave you a little bit of cleanup, but in pine with a sharp chisel, you can make short work of the whole thing. Check your fit, and once you have it exactly where you want, which is even and tight, then you can go ahead and cut your real work pieces. Go nice and slow because chip out is a real problem in pine.
With the rabbets cut for the top, I can move on to the stopped dado for the bottom shelf of this thing. The dado set being set up for 3/8 of an inch works out pretty well for this. That's half the thickness of the material. So that's what I'm gonna cut the dado in here. And to get it positioned so that it starts 10 inches down from the top of here, I need 10 3/4 from the fence to this edge of the dado blade. And we're cutting 3/8 of an inch wide. We also want to cut 3/8 of an inch high. I can tune the tenons a little bit on the ends of the shelf, so eyeball's good enough. All right, and for the record, and for you safety police out there, I know this is not the safest way to make this cut. I should have a miter gauge right here and a block so that I can set my depth and then be clear of the fence. Having this piece trapped between the fence and the blade is pretty much a big no-no. But I don't really have an alternative right now because I don't know where my miter gauge went. Did I say stopped dados? Yeah, I meant through dados. No, really, I did. Small change of plans here. This is why you don't cut corners on safety. Like, nothing bad happened to me, but because I was so focused on, don't let it kick back, don't let it kick back, keep it against the fence, I totally forgot that these were supposed to be stopped dados. No matter, it's not really going to make any structural difference or just a tiny aesthetic thing, and if you won't tell anyone, I won't.
Here I'm using scrap cutoff pieces to determine the height of the dado set. This is what determines how thick my tenon is on the shelf piece, and it's a pretty critical measurement, so sneak up on it and try it lots of times before you grab the real workpiece and start cutting the tenons you intend to keep. The length of the tenon is determined by the sacrificial fence.
Here's the tenon as it came off of the table saw. And I did some test fits, and it's real close. It's as close as you're going to get it, frankly, on a table saw, unless you have some pretty nice equipment in your shop. For me and my old $80 Craftsman garage sale special, I dare not cut this anymore on the table saw, just because I can't get that thousandth of an inch kind of accuracy to make sure that the tenon is precisely the right length. And that's really the thing that I leave myself some adjustment with. The width of the tenon on here is easy to massage if you have a shoulder plane or a rabbeting block plane. I have neither. I have just a plain old block plane. So I make sure and I get the thickness of the tenon right off the table saw to match whatever I did with the dado blade. But in my case, these tenons are just a whisper too long, and rather than trying to go back and figure out how to cut a fraction of a blade width off on the table saw, enter ye old block plane. Don't let yourself be discouraged if you need to do this. This is normal, right? Hand tools are, in the end, if they're set up properly and they're sharp, and I mean really sharp, they're much more precise. It's way easier to think about taking 1,000th or 2,000ths of an inch off with a plane than it is at the table saw. So just take your time, clamp up your work, get it where you can see it. And the only other thing you're going to want to watch, because this is pine, don't go clear off the end. It will tear out. So you're going to have to plane to the middle a couple of times and then turn around and come back the other way. Okay, with all of the joinery cut on the main carcass of the headboard, I can do a dry fit up here. Now I did go ahead and pre-sand this stuff down to 220. I don't know that that'll be my final sanding. We'll see how much I bang it up, gluing it up. Always, always, always do a dry fit and a dry run for your glue up procedure. For instance, I've learned two things by doing this. One, I have learned that I think I need to take about 1/16 of an inch off of the top. When I get it square to the shelf piece, it doesn't quite fit up here. So I'm going to shorten that up just a widge. I found out that because of the couplers I needed to make my pipe clamps long enough, I can't get the clamps to sit right where I need them to clamp this up. So I'm going to have to put some spacer boards in here to make the project a little wider to make the clamps work. And I think I also found out that clamping this up with it laying on its side is not the way to go, because I can't see the joints. And it's kind of lopsided. The legs make it want to just tip off the bench this way. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to shave just a wee bit off this top so that it comes together perfectly square. And then when I glue it up for real, I'm going to get a helper, because this is a two-person job, and I'm going to do it upright with the legs pointing at the sky. I think that's going to go much better. So let's get to it. Yet another Goldberg special here on Miscellaneous Mat, but it seems to be working. This clamp right here in the middle is actually holding the shelf piece down. The pipe clamps are strong enough to want to bow it up, which will knock the joints out of square. So this is just keeping that piece relatively flat so that these joints dry correctly. Since this is a bookshelf and it's gonna therefore hold a lot of weight, I want these joints to glue up nice and strong. I'm going to give them a full 24 hours in the clamp to set up before I move on to the next steps, which will be the addition of the inside pieces of the leg, which are how it attaches to the headboard, and the back of this. Need to route a little groove and drop a 1/4 inch ply back panel in there. Then there's some decorative work, chamfering, and of course, the old finish. But that's all going to have to wait for another day, because I got to wait on the glue. Till then, stay safe, YouTube.